What's up, everybody? This is Bobby Warren. We're playing with pizza.com. Hey, Charlie Anderson put out a video the other day, and I was really fascinated by it. I live in Northeast Ohio right now, in Worcester, Ohio, but I used to live in Cincinnati. That's where I met my wife at Cincinnati Bible College and Seminary. So this video is what I learned spending a day at Ohio's best pizzeria. And anyway, I want to do a reaction to it because there's some interesting things in here that I found fascinating. Ready? Let's go, baby.
Even if you expect that 90% of people won't notice that you did this with extra care, it's like still for you, not to sound too corny, but it's a craft, right? It is. I mean, we're making something. You got to stay excited about little improvements that just you notice or your coworkers notice or whatever.
So this is Alex, owner of St. Francis Apizza in Cincinnati. They're putting out some of the best pizza in Ohio, certainly the best that I've had since I moved here. And recently I was fortunate to be able to spend the day with Alex and his team and get a behind the scenes look at exactly how they do what they do.
Our main focus with the pizza is pretty much a super great loaf of bread. A lot of the positive feedback that we get, I think why people like us is...
So he's talking about bread, right? My dog's over there shaking. Probably wants to go outside. You might hear a bark here. He's talking about, the dough being like a good bread. And Dave Portnoy in one of his videos, and I don't know if it was, I think it may have been a New Jersey pizzeria, maybe Connecticut, but I think New Jersey, where they were talking about how it was made from a bread dough. And for those of you who know more about pizza than I do, can you put in the comments, like, what is the difference between a bread dough and a pizza dough? Now, he's going to talk later about how, like, I think he just uses a typical four ingredient pizza dough recipe or bread dough recipe. In this case, it's, flour, water, salt, and yeast. And perhaps that's the difference, that a bread dough uses those four ingredients, where a pizza dough, you put in the sugar and oil. All right, here we go.
Is usually focused on the crust. I definitely loved pizza as a kid, but especially bread. Like I was like the kind of person who would eat, an entire baguette in one sitting when I was like 5, and then like finding places.
All right, talk about eating an entire baguette like when he was 5. So I grew up in Revere, Massachusetts, up at the top of the street, like, I don't know, 50, 60 feet from my front door was Castiello's Italian bakery. And we used to go up there and get what's called a loaf of scally bread. And when it was fresh, they couldn't run it through the slicer. So you'd take that hot bread home and you just tear it apart. It'd be steaming, and you put butter on it. Oh my, that was awesome. All right, let's go here.
Places like Tartine in San Francisco. I really like that like super caramelized, like burnished crust. So we wanted something that would really have a great texture that varies. For us, it's more of like an eggshell texture.
And I can tell you, after trying their pizza, it's pretty incredible. And lucky for us, Alex was willing to show me exactly how they do it on a day-to-day basis, which of course all starts with the dough.
Oh, I nailed it. Okay, I'm going for 64.3. Not super scientific way of getting there, because it's just a lot of turning on. It's like, getting the right bath water temperature in a way.
Yeah.
Just got 2 handles to adjust, but we use a really simple 5th grade math equation to figure out what our desired dough temperature is when it comes out of the mixer. So it just accounts for the difference in the temperature of the air right now in the room, the poolish when we come in, and then the flour, and then also the amount of energy in the form of heat that the mixer is going to add throughout the mixing process.
So they use a poolish, which is, as you saw in the notes, a pre-ferment. So typically you'll mix equal parts flour and water with a little bit of yeast, and you'll let that, you can put it in the fridge overnight, you can leave it on the counter all day, 12, 18 hours, whatever you want to do. But when I say equal parts, don't do what I did. So I measured 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of water, and I put in like a half teaspoon of yeast, maybe a quarter teaspoon of yeast. You have to weigh it. It's equal parts weighed. And anyway, if you want to make a dough in the morning, just at night make your poolish and leave it on the counter overnight, and it'll be ready when you get to it the next morning.
Process.
So like what kind of flour do you have?
Okay,
here?
so it's a bread flour, central milling.
All right, see that red rose? I watched. So he's got Sir Lancelot high gluten flour. It's King Arthur flour, and then he's got this red rose. I don't know if he mixes it or what, but I saw the rose on that, and when I was in the grocery store the other day, I saw a package of enriched, bleached, pre-sifted dough, and it was 5 roses. And I thought it was this. I thought it was this one because I remember seeing rose, so I picked it up, and I'm actually in the process of making a video using it. The dough is, bulk fermenting right now, even while we speak. But the 5 roses is pretty good. But I thought I was picking up this dough. All right, here we go. Let's go, baby.
Yeah, so I believe from out of Utah. I always give credit where credit's due to Apizza Shoals in Portland, Oregon, which is where I grew up.
Again, if you're in Connecticut, you're in New Haven, which some consider the capital of the pizza world. It's ah-beets. It's ah-beets. It's not a pizza.
I go there all the time, like with my family, my friends. Brian Spangler and his wife Kim are really, great business people, great people. And then Brian is like the ultimate baker and pizza maker. And so that's my childhood pizza paradigm. That's the pizza that in my head, I'm always kind of chasing after.
I think this is, when it comes to pizza, it's usually the pizza that we grew up on that we love the most. And it's the only style, it's the best style, whatever. So I grew up in Revere. I grew up on Bianchi's Pizza. Love Bianchi's Pizza. But when I had Pizzeria Regina in the Boston's North End, and they got a restaurant at Faneuil, a spot in Faneuil Hall or Quincy Market in Boston. They have Polcari's is an Italian restaurant, which is they own the company that owns Polcari's owns Pizzeria Regina. And so this Polcari's restaurant in Saugus also has Pizzeria Regina inside it. And so I grew up on Bianchi's, but Pizzeria Regina is my favorite. And then Frank Pepe's in New Haven, Connecticut. Ooh, is a close second. That's ah-beets.
So right now I'm just breaking up the poolish a little bit so that it doesn't clump up in the mixer. So just trying to kind of break it up with my hands a little bit, between my fingers. It's pretty goopy, gummy. It doesn't just dissolve on its own. It also makes it a little bit easier to just dump this. By adding the water, the poolish goes into the mixer a little bit more smoothly than it otherwise would. So Scott mixed it between 7 and 8 p.m. 7:30. And usually 12, 13 hours is a good amount of time. I'll say 12 to 14, because we start mixing usually just before right at 9.
And this leads us into the first little trick they use, which is one that's honestly super smart for a pizzeria working in a small space like they are here at St. Francis.
We find that the poolish does best around 68 degrees. So we just converted the thermostat to a smart one, so we can just set it so that, like right now in the spring, it gets cooler at night, warmer during the day. We just set the thermostat to keep the room at 68 pretty much all the time. Obviously in the summer, it gets a little challenging because the AC can't necessarily keep up.
So he's getting ready to mix the dough, right? So he's got his water and his poolish in there. And I wish they would talk about actually how long, they would mix for. It's not really clearly articulated here.
But it's pretty close. So we use so little yeast, like you can tell there's no oil or sugar or anything like that. It's just flour, water, salt, and yeast.
And what approximate hydration are you at?
So he's going to say 68% hydration. But when he says so little yeast, a little yeast goes a long way if when you let it just ferment and rise. But also, there is some yeast that was in the poolish as well.
Right now I think 68. Sometimes we'll get like a new lot of flour and then we will have to adjust it slightly, but we're using the same type of flour. But it's amazing how just a different lot of the same brand of flour, the same product will be so different. But we'll usually change it by like 3 to 5% if we need to, and then we'll kind of work our way back down to hopefully closer to 68. But yeah, when we started, I couldn't afford a mixer. So for the first, I would say 8 months, 9 months, we hand mixed. Yeah, you could just feel the tendonitis, but
Can you imagine that? Having to hand mix enough dough for like 100 pizzas. That's wild.
yeah, it felt like a good accomplishment when we were able to like actually buy a mixer.
Yeah. So this mixer is a 150 pound or something?
Yeah, we can do 150 doughs in it, and that's
So if I can stop again, a lot of people have dreams of starting a business. It could be a pizza business, it could be a food truck or anything. Think about, think about what he was able to do. He he so much wanted to open a pizza restaurant that he was willing to mix the dough by hand until he can afford it. So you don't have to go into tremendous debt to start a business. I don't know, if he's carrying debt or what, but the fact that he's renting a space, right? So he didn't have to. He's not paying a mortgage. He was mixing dough by hand until he can afford a machine. And so, if you want to start a business, you know, take your time, think it through. When I started my digital marketing business, you know, I bootstrapped it for about $600 to get started. Now I set aside like $3,000 in the bank to cover any kind of expenses over the first few months. But anyway, I love and appreciate that he was willing to start his business without a machine and willing to put in the sweat equity to make this thing work. Kudos.
that's pushing it. That's like gonna get flour everywhere. Most days we would do 2 mixes on a Friday just because we want more than 150. But like today, we're just doing a small mix of 66 doughs. Our dough balls are a little bit over a pound.
And you do 16-inch pizzas?
Yep, just one size. Because you can do like a half.
So I'm not getting into the metric measurements here, but in the States, the rule of thumb is about an ounce per inch of pizza. He's doing 16-inch pizzas. His doughs are just a little over 16 ounces.
In half, so
yeah,
we're able to get away with that. And as you can see, we don't have like refrigeration space to carry dough, so everything's at room temperature.
This is wild. He's going to explain it a little bit more. He has no walk-in coolers. Like when I toured Frank Pepe's Pizzeria Napolitana in New Haven, I mean, there were just walk-ins everywhere and just carts and carts of dough. We were there, I believe, on a Saturday, and I think they were going to do like 1,600 pizzas that day. So you can imagine how many dough boxes they had filled. And they used wooden dough boxes, not the plastic ones. But what he is able to do with limited space, limited refrigeration, using brain power, creative thinking is just amazing. People can learn from him.
I mean, we will put the dough in the fridge to slow it down on a hot day. Pretty much every day we end up putting it in the fridge. But so most of this is just gonna get like cleaned up on the final mix. But it's been like 5 of actual mixing time.
So this is where he says it's been 5 of the actual mixing time. So I don't know what the final time is. I don't know if he's saying this is 5 minutes, most likely. But I think he's going to do something of like an autolyse. Typically, with an autolyse, you won't put your salt in, but his salt is already in this mix. But watch what he does here.
Just gonna let it rest a little bit, just because if we don't let it rest here, it will actually start to tear and just kind of take away from the kind of development that we want. So we do a 5-minute rest. All right, so right now we're just, this is where we do kind of, the process changes day to day. So I'm just trying to pull a window pane, and I'm looking for like some very light gluten development, but not too much. So basically I don't want it to tear so easily, which it's doing right now. So I'm gonna just add a little more time to the mix. So this is just 10 seconds. I'm just gonna add a little more time, and we're only using speed 1, so it does have 2 speeds. Our goal is to just have basically the pizza turn out the same way every day, but it's just so hard to do that. Like, we can't do that every day. And I'm not.
That is so true. I tell you, before I started this channel, I never made pizza the same way twice. One time it will be easy, one time it will be hard. One time I could slide the dough off a peel, the next time it's stuck and I had to basically abandon it and flip it over and make a stromboli or calzone out of it. It is so tough. The more you do it, the better you get, but there's still variables like the temperature, the humidity, the flour, will change from batch to batch. I had a batch of all purpose flour, just generic off the shelf. That was terrible. I tried making a dough and it was horrendous. It's like I could not believe how bad this flour was. Made a terrible dough. But there's just so many factors. And then, he's dealing with, pretty much a biological product, right? So the cheese is coming from milk from cows, and they're going to produce, the milk's not going to be always the same. The tomatoes, you can try to get them as close as possible, but that's always changing. Everything is just always changing, and it's tough to to do the same thing twice. And how those pizza chains do it, I have no idea because I can't.
Like, unhappy with it. It's just, but it's like we were just talking about, if it's this craft and you're trying to improve it, just to get it to like 100% of what it can be, I think we're at our best when we're like just trying to stay focused, and then still keeping everyone like engaged and interested.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you too, like, didn't you take your team to
Yeah, we have.
New York? Or
Yeah, so
something?
we've been to Chicago, so New York twice, Chicago once in 3 years. And I think it is like the best investment that we could have made as a business, and just like, seeing what the bar is in other places, getting inspired, getting the time together to get to know people better outside of this kitchen. But then also we've tried to kind of like add perks to this career. Like, I always thought it was cool to, if I got to travel for work like 2 or 3 times, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, someone's paying me to fly to this place and learn for a conference. Like, this is so cool. In the small ways that we can, we're trying to get our staff to be able to have some fun and come back inspired.
Now, another thing they do here at St. Francis to keep things interesting is host a tavern-style pizza pop-up on Monday nights, which Alex was telling me they've had a lot of fun with. So I was curious to see if they had any intentions to expand to other styles of pizza in the future.
We would do it as like a kind of a one-off thing, just for fun.
I wish I could do a tavern style pizza. I don't have a dough sheeter, and I don't know if I have the patience to laminate a dough. But anyway, I'm going to try it sometime.
We've done like a New Haven night where we've made true New Haven style pizza, just
True New Haven ah-beets.
for like on like a Tuesday night when we would otherwise be fairly slow. And it just,
See, that's another thing where he's just being very creative. Tuesday nights are slow, so guess what? We're going to try new things, and hopefully, he's hopeful he can attract customers in on a slow night. Hey, today we're going to do New Haven ah-beets. On this slow day, we're going to do Chicago tavern style. It's just smart. Man, I'm impressed. I'm just impressed.
kind of helps everyone remember that we are people who love pizza and like to just try things, even though they might not be like perfect or they might not be what we'll do forever.
Amen. It's like on my channel, sometimes I get, knocked because I don't use olive oil. I don't do this. I use imperial measurements instead of grams. I don't use baker's percentages, what have you. It's like I'm just having fun. I call it playing with pizza. I'm just having fun trying to do pizza in a tiny home kitchen, right? I got no space, but I don't care. It's just like having fun with pizza. And I'm telling you, man, I'm so glad. Charlie, thank you for bringing this pizzeria to light, man. Thank you.
And then also I think for like our staff, and for me, it's just fun to do something different every once in a while without, like just kind of being all over the place and losing our focus.
But I will say the nice thing about doing the same thing and having the same style is you really get to hone down on all the fine details and really increase the quality in a way that I think a lot of people don't realize is even possible for certain things like this. So it's nice to be able to like really hammer out all the small details and make those little tweaks to just make it as high a quality as possible.
Yeah. I mentioned like a Pizza Shoals or like Lindustry in New York, and you're just like, oh my God, there's so much more to learn, even if you're just doing one thing. Like there's a really high bar out there and we're just trying to meet it. Maybe exceed it one day. So it's not tearing anymore, not as easily. And if I hold it up, I can see to a light, I can see some veins in there. So this is where I'm gonna stop it. And I'm gonna pull the dough out. And so I'm just gonna divide this up, basically half the mixer in one bin, half in the other. We try not to go over like 30 doughs in one bin of this size. Beyond that, the mass effect of like having more dough in there just means the dough is gonna be warmer, it's gonna move faster. And then the fermentation will get a little crazy by the time we're shaping it. And this really, like my whole model for this process, I learned from Brian Spangler at a Pizza Shoals. So like I went and spent 3 days with him, and obviously we've changed things a little bit based on the differences in our, environment, preferences, stuff like that. But yeah, shout out to Brian.
Now from here, they're gonna perform 4 sets of stretch and folds spaced out at 45-minute intervals in order to keep developing the gluten just a little bit more gently. So as the rest of the team finish prepping sauces.
So when you have a high hydration dough and 68% is getting there, Patio Pizza has a wonderful Detroit pizza dough that's 70% hydration. And like these stretches and folds are a way to strengthen and develop the gluten. And it just makes for a wonderful dough. And as Jesse at Patio Pizza reminds me, when you're working with a high hydration dough, be sure to wet your hands before you pick up the dough. It's a lot better.
Salads and pizza toppings, Alex and I had some more time to chat. And as someone looking to open my own pizzeria someday, I've been pretty impressed with how well they're able to operate here in such a small space. So there was one main thing that I wanted to know.
Do you know like how many square feet this building is?
950.
950.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? 950 square feet. That is small. That is small. That's everything, right? That's wild. There's no walk-in space. There's just refrigerator doors. You open it and boom, you slide a tray in or whatever. This is wild.
Okay.
Too small.
You would like to have a bigger space?
Yeah. Great way to start, but it's too small. I would say like it works from a like production standpoint. Like that's not a problem. Like in other words, we have enough space for the amount of pizza that we're usually selling. But we also we close at 8 o'clock at night. Like on a Friday, we're pretty much at capacity.
Okay.
And that, that's just when most people want pizza. So, we want to try to sell more pizza on Tuesday like today, but the demand is on Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So, especially being all takeout. But hopefully.
So when I worked in restaurants, my dad was a chef. He didn't own the restaurant, and I would help him. And sometimes I would be the first cook. I'd fill in for his first cook, so I'd be like the assistant chef. or whatever. And one of the things that the manager and all my Valley Steakhouse friends will know, Mr. B. Uh, anyway, he said that if he ever had his own restaurant, it would be all takeout because with a sit-in restaurant, you're going to deal with a lot of breakage. The plates are going to break, silverware is going to walk out the front door, uh, ostensibly under its own power. Glasses are going to break. And it's much more overhead because now you need tables, you need chairs. If the chairs wear out, they got to be replaced. The tables get wobbly, they got to be straightened. There's just so much overhead with a sit down establishment. But you remember what he said, this is a great way to start out. So I think he's already thinking about scaling up to a sit down establishment, but he's going to get there, in due time. Let's go.
The iteration of this we'll have some like dine-in component because it's a bummer to put pizza in a box. I think it was a really good way to start because there's not too much operationally with, we don't have a bar, we don't have servers, we don't have a dish station. Like it's really simple, but man, it'd be really nice to, not only have the quality be more clear to people when you're eating it fresh out of the oven, but also there's just a different energy when you're just sending people away with things as more of a storefront versus like having them here and having fun and enjoying it in your space.
Yeah, that's the thing with takeout, because as soon as it goes in the box and you close that box, now that beautifully baked pizza is now steaming, right? And it's a shame, but hey, that's the deal when you take it out.
So hopefully that'll be something that we can add on in the future, but one thing at a time, kind of. So the first one's always a little messy because the dough is just all over the place. But basically, I'm just trying to let that fall underneath, and the more I can extend it, the better. And I'm just gonna tuck it into a neat little kind of package or envelope here.
So I have a 65% hydration dough bulk fermenting right now. And as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to do some stretch and folds.
I don't want to tear it or anything, but just folding it over itself. Kind of a light little stretching and strengthening. I think just because we are going to use it today, so we never want to like push it too hard at any one point. It's still strong, but kind of gradual, gentle process, which translates to the texture of the dough when it bakes. Having that nice, eggshell outside exterior and soft interior. We have one more at about 12:15, and then one more around 1 o'clock.
So by about 1:45 p.m., the dough is ready to be balled up for service, which is going to start at 4 p.m. And this is another point in the process where Alex and his team use another pretty unique, but in my opinion, very smart technique in order to make the best use possible of their small space.
So we don't have any dough bins, which again is another operational, let's say, trick that I learned from Brian Spangler of work with the space that you have. So if you don't have a walk-in, you're not going to want to have dough bins. So we plastic wrap every individual dough, which sucks from an environmental standpoint, but allows us a lot of versatility as far as you can take 10 doughs out, let them start to keep proofing at room temperature, leave 10 in if you're not as busy, and then this whole process is designed to work just at room temp. So
this just blows my mind, right? And so what I'm thinking is like how many doughs get stuck on the plastic wrap? Because sometimes, I'll cover a bowl with plastic wrap and let the dough bulk ferment, and it hits the top and it just sticks. So I would love to know how many doughs stick, and you got to fight with it.
I would say that's like something to really consider is just, you don't need a walk-in, but if you don't have a walk-in, you're going to need to change you can't refrigerate your dough probably unless you're just doing like 40 pizzas or something. So like if at 3:30 they look like they're proofing pretty fast, we'll just take whichever trays we're going to use last for the night and just throw them in here for up to 45 minutes, an hour. Then you have to remember to take them out with enough time.
Yeah.
So that if we do get busy, we're not stretching really cold dough.
So what dough weight are you looking for?
525. And we'll go up to 535, just for the sake of not being psychotic.
Very space efficient too with the plastic wrapping them, because you could fit 24 on there.
Yeah. The Dewey's, they have the white dough trays, it's like fiberglass dough trays, and their large is a 17-inch, and it's 6 per, basically this size. Because anything beyond that, once they're proofed properly, they start merging together and cut them out. This is not ideal. Some of us stretch a little differently. I like to get it pretty even, so I know when I'm forming my crust, I'm like keeping it.
Stretching the dough is something I always struggle with. I've tried to keep that cornicione on the edge. I saw one pizzeria from I believe Brooklyn, maybe the Bronx. He would just flatten out the pizza and wouldn't worry about trying to keep an edge. So that's what I've been doing lately. But you see him develop a nice cornicione, and it's like, yeah, maybe I should be doing that.
The same like mass all the way around. If I feel any bubbles, that I can kind of compensate for those before I form the crust.
So how does your sort of like system work? Like the tickets print out over there, then
She just tells them how many doughs she needs. Version stretching isn't looking at like what's on the pizzas or anything. It doesn't really matter for them. And then on a day when we have like 2 people, the person on stretch is typically also the person coming around and spinning pizzas in the oven, checking them, and then cutting them. And then the person on make ideally is topping all the pizzas. And the 2 of them could do 6 pizzas in 15 minutes. We're trying to just get like a lot of character into the crust and in the flavor of the crust without.
So he calls himself St. Francis Apizza, right? Ah-beets is used to it's how they refer to pizza in New Haven. And a New Haven pizza is typically cooked in a coal-fired oven around 650 degrees. The coals are burning at like 2,000, but they have some type of vent system where they keep the heat in the oven around 650, and they have a charred edge on theirs, right? So that would be too light for a typical New Haven ah-beets.
Without going too far where it's like over the top sour. And also like the consistency of the bakes. If we were to proof it for much longer, we'd be dealing with a lot more bubbles, uneven crust, things like that. Just that we want things to be interesting but fairly uniform.
Yeah, I noticed you have a couple signs that say like.
So that's getting close to ah-beets right there, New Haven style.
Caramelization is better than the leopard spotting.
For
or something.
our pizza, yeah. I love leoparding. Nothing against.
See that picture on the bottom right? That's kind of ah-beets territory. Maybe a little bit too far, but that's ah-beets New Haven style right there.
That, but for our pizza, we want it's a fairly long bake, 7, sometimes 8 minutes, and so we want the dough to basically cook evenly, but it also has to cook fast enough that it doesn't dry out and then become like chewy cardboard. So we're not trying to be like the wild like 80% hydration, which I love, but just we're trying to be something that's a little bit more traditional without being like boring or too simple. Yeah. This is like truly eggshell. It's not dried out at all, but it's got that nice caramelization. Carbon!
Yeah.
So if you're ever in Cincinnati, I highly recommend checking out St. Francis. As you can see, they're putting in a ton of passion and effort into their product, and it really does show when you eat their pizza.
So thank you, Charlie. Thanks for taking me back to Cincinnati and sharing about St. Francis. I'll call it ah-beets. So I'll definitely, next time we're in Cincinnati, I guess we'll skip La Rosa's and go to Skyline and St. Francis ah-beets. And so this just a wonderful operation. Thoroughly impressed. Charlie, I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And for those of you who want to start a business, any business, think like this man. I forget his name, and I apologize, but he he leaned into his limitations and didn't let him stop him. All right, that's it for this edition of playingwithpizza.com. And thanks so much for watching. And I would love if you hit like and subscribe, if you like this content. But no matter what, thanks for watching. And if you want to share it, go ahead. As my great grandma Abundandola used to say, manja, Bobby, manja. Ciao, everybody.